What's up, y'all? Welcome to Cultural Canvases, Black Men Reshaping Fine Art and Creative Spaces. I'm your host, Badir McCleary. This podcast deep dives into the vibrant world of contemporary art and design with some awesome Black brothers that I just can't wait to talk to always. Today, I have a special guest, Brother Charles Mason, who I've been a fan of his work for so long now, ever since it popped up on the timeline. I don't even remember who shared it or where it came from, but I'm glad it hit the timeline. Um, Welcome, bro. I'm very very glad and happy and thankful that you're here. Um, yeah, all of that, man, all of that. Like I'm, we've been
No, no, no.
for sure.
Much,
We've been
much
trying to
appreciated
connect
for
for at
sure.
least a week. Well, we was having some podcast issues. The platform was going crazy on me, but I'm glad we was able to connect today, man. And one of the first things that caught me about you and your work, because your work is very almost representative of the person that I got, because we met first at Art Basel walking, because I was like, oh snap, that's the homie right there. Let me go
Yeah.
introduce myself. You know what I mean? Let me introduce myself to the bro. And
Yeah.
had a very very cool convo, quick John, and it was love. And I just was like, yo, let me reach out to the brother and just see. So I've been just checking the work, and for me it immediately hits me as a rose in the concrete. You know what I mean? Like it's 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 that vibe,
Yeah, sure
being
enough.
from, we kind of from like brother sister cities. I'm from Philly, you're from Baltimore. Um, Even though I'm living out LA and Texas and all these places these days, um, like I understand your work, I think, more than most. I mean, and a lot of people understand that work,
Mm,
because just growing up in the
hmm.
neighborhoods that we grow up in, because Baltimore is like literally a reflection of Philly. Every time I'm in Baltimore, I feel like I'm home. I have lots of friends there, um, but it's always this beauty in the cracks of these neighborhoods. When you're in the neighborhood, you always
Hmm.
see these random flowers, in the projects, whether somebody's mama planted them, or a regular, street, where it's just something growing out of the ground that is not supposed to be there. You know what I mean? Sometimes I feel like
Yeah.
that with Black men in the art world. There's a lot that try to keep us down, but we still remain. And we push through all of that stuff. So
Hmm.
I I I become familiar with that work in its sense, and it's it's controlled chaos, if I should say anything, you know what I mean? So it's it
Yeah.
really disrupts the flow of what's a beautiful, white wall gallery in an amazing way, bro. And I just kind of want to start with, how did you define that as a part of your practice, that feeling of that Baltimore grit, that blue collar feel?
Hmm. Honestly, it kind of starts with my dad, in a very particular way, in that he, like his dad before him, worked at Leaseway. You know what
Mm,
I mean? Just like how like GM and all these big motor
yes,
like
sir.
businesses was in the Midwest in Detroit. Here, like there was like Bethlehem Steel, there were like different factories here as well, because we're a port city.
Mm-hmm.
And so my dad, very much is, I could argue, is like a starting point for a lot of things, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
say this because I actually went to grad school in Philadelphia for 2 years at PAFA, and
Word.
that's kind of, and it was funny. The first one of the first things I learned about when I was in Philly was about Move. You know what I mean? And like
Yes.
the history there and what they were doing, and I was like, oh wow, I had never heard about it. I'm like just down the street in Baltimore, 95 or whatever, right?
My great
But in
grandfather's
turn,
neighborhood, man.
oh wow,
Yeah,
bruh.
yeah, yeah, bro. Yeah, it's real.
Whew.
It's real. Yep.
That you're seeped in something that a lot of people may or may not know about, that is so important, and I realized that when I was in Philly, right? And I realized that, so when I graduated grad school in 2019, um and I came back to Baltimore, and specifically for a particular opportunity at this one place that has live workspaces, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to really think about my relationship with my father. And so it starts like this. Now, I was trying to kind of avoid it, but let me be as fully transparent and as honest as possible. I graduated in 2019 from grad school, and I had a dream. And in that dream, my grandfather came to me, and he essentially sat at the foot of my bed, and he was like, everything's going to be okay. And I didn't understand what was happening. So
Mm-hmm.
again, I'm a third. I'm named after Charles Jr., who's named after his dad, Charles Sr. And I had a relationship to a degree with my granddad, but not really like what I would perceive as like a fully developed relationship. Like, oh, I could call granddad for something, or I could like pop up, but he was there. He was very present in my life or whatever. But as I grew older, I started to learn stories about him and how he was, and he wasn't really a great person. And so specifically thinking about my dad and having to live through that and the things that he had to deal with, and then thinking about the day in which I graduated and having him come to me, it was kind of like it was wild, right?
Yeah.
So my dad didn't end up coming to my graduation, and so I ended up asking him. He was like, "Oh, I didn't know you wanted me to," right? And so
Mm.
that moment, these two very particular moments, are essentially where the work has been evolving into now, which is thinking
Wow.
about conditional love and enduring. Specifically,
Wow.
thinking about the ways in which people have loved my dad and the conditions in which people have loved my dad and how he has endured that. And I think about that based on a person who was born in the 50s, grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s. You know what I mean? Like these very formative
Mm-hmm.
years of history
Mm-hmm.
of like crack, of addiction, of disco, of dance, of hip hop. All these things are happening. The civil rights movement. All these things are around, and regardless or
Yeah.
not, if our parents were involved, they were directly affected by what was happening around them,
Facts.
right? And so I think about how he had to live through these things and he endured these things, and then it evolved into what are the conditions for someone to love the black body and how we endured that, and then it evolved into what are the conditions for someone to love me and how I endured that. And I started to
Mm.
look at the ways in which I moved in space. And the reason I'm bringing this all up is because I was raised not necessarily with an appreciation for art. I knew what it was. I know what portraits were. I did these things. I went through school,
Mm-hmm.
but it still wasn't this thing that I had an appreciation for, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you graduate, you go to school. I was first generation. I went to school, whatever. I graduated. I didn't know what I was doing. So I went to Parsons, the new school, for 3 months. And at
Mm-hmm.
that time, I was like, oh my God, black people are curators, thinkers, writers,
Yeah.
lecturers, professors. You know what I mean? And I was 24
Yeah.
years old, right? And so I left after 3 months because I wanted to protest. I wanted to do things because around that time again, police brutality was running rampant, right?
Yep.
And so I'm thinking about all these different scenarios, all this different movement, and I started to feel like I was home when I was in art. But when I went to grad school the second time, I started to really realize and kind of focus in on when I'm considered an artist, my existence is validated in a very particular way, and
Mm.
I'm important, or people want to talk to me, or people think I have something to add, right? And so
Yeah.
when that started to happen, I started to think about blackness as a performance, and I still think about it in that way, but because when I would be in art spaces, even now I still see it. Like everyone wants to
Mm-hmm.
talk to me,
Mm-hmm.
figure out who I am, how I know these people, what am I doing in these
Yep.
spaces, how am
Oh
I
hell
maneuvering in these
yeah.
spaces? You know what I mean? And then I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, but I'm also like a black person, and I'm also like a person who grew up understanding hard work and the blue collar life that you're speaking to,
Mm-hmm.
and I understood what it means to like just be a person, a man of his word, to be a black person, to be a black man, and all these different things and all these nuanced things. And so essentially the work is all of that collapsing on each other. All
Mm.
of it. Like my dad and my mom's history of being in West and East Baltimore, my dad being a person who got hurt on the job and dealing with that, learning about my grandfather, learning about how he treated my father and his siblings, my dad being the youngest, the only boy, I'm the youngest, I'm the only boy, being named after these two particular men who had very tumultuous lifestyles and ways of existing at some point in time in their life,
Mm-hmm.
learning what love is, mourning grief, dealing with double standards, dealing with double consciousness, dealing with like what it means to just be a person, and specifically a Black person that wants to be an artist and wants to focus on art. And so
Yeah.
my work in the chaos that it is like dealing with and thinking about is very much because of my grandfather, because of my father, and because I know I wouldn't be here without them,
Mm-hmm.
like as a being, as a living human being. And I'm super super appreciative to all the women who have come in my family, my
Big
grandmothers that I didn't
facts.
know, my great grandmothers, all these different people, because again with them I'm not here as well. But I
Yeah.
specifically started to look at, because I'm a Charles Mason, and I'm a third,
Mm-hmm.
what those relationships were for my dad and my father, and how
Hell yeah.
they just kind of were continuing. So I have been trying to and been actually doing changing our relationship, me and my dad's, proactively, reactively, just kind of really just kind of developing it differently as I've gotten older. And so like a lot of that is the reason why things are the way they are in my work. And so, I'm sure I know you have questions, but I just want to segue really quickly
No,
to
please
like
go. No, I'm
just
listening, bro.
just
It's so relatable that it's crazy. Please go.
you. So like one of the things that like I see without realizing it. So I use a lot of tarps, right? And we understand
Mm-hmm.
tarps as being these protective, resistant things, especially during
Mm-hmm.
like hurricanes. We've seen a lot of blue tarps, a lot of types of tarps to cover and to protect roofs
Yes.
and to protect things and situations. And so my dad has always had tarps and things around, and I work with them to a degree. And so I take that knowledge and I take the David Hammonds of the world, and I'm like
Mm-hmm.
kind of juxtaposing these ideas of a function, a utilitarian object, and thinking about it in an artistic way, not to just hide a painting, but to use it as a painting, to use it as the canvas
Mm-hmm.
and the substrate, because I know what it means to see something and not think of it as a valued object until
Yes.
retroactively it becomes that value object, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we don't always necessarily think of the value of a tarp until a catastrophe happens, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe you
Mm-hmm.
have a parent, a cousin, somebody that has a lawnmower and they covers it, or a nice car and they cover it. But it's always a sense of covering, but it's also a sense of protection. And
Yeah.
so we can think about like various art makers who do or think about protection in a very particular way. And so I'm doing the same thing, thinking about this
Mm.
protection, thinking about this way of existing as a Black person, and how is it that I can move through space and still feel quote unquote safe and still feel like I can do the thing that I want to do and essentially taking up space. And so all of this is
Mm-hmm.
from the example, even though my frustrations with my father exist, I'm thankful and blessed that he was around and that I had my father in my life, but also realizing that that comes with its own set of problems, its own set of triumphs, its own set of tensions. And so
Yeah.
realizing that now, hindsight again is 2020, I realize just how impactful the ways in which he taught me to exist have then helped me to figure out how I should exist as both a person, a Black person, a Black man, and an artist all together in a way. And so it comes down to like the work has to be the work. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's funny, my dad would tell me maybe a year ago, a few months ago, or something like that. He was like, he'd be like, "Babes, your time is coming. Like you just kind of gotta wait." Because I have
Mm-hmm.
so many frustrations with the career path and the art world in general.
Yes.
But like when he
Yes.
said it in a wild way, sometimes when I get really, really in a really particular moment, I just remember him saying like, "Your time is gonna come." And
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like one of those moments where like even though all these things happened to him and he had to fight through and apologize and accept accountability and do all this work, and me wanting to be an even better version of him and wanting to be a better Charles than he was,
Mm-hmm.
it's only happened because of like who he was, who my grandfather was, and how I'm trying to contend with all this and unpack what it means to be me and then break these generational like curses that happen.
Hell yeah, bro. Like
that
that.
was a long. That was a long. That was a
No,
long.
bro.
Yeah.
It was necessary for you to say that and for me to hear that in so many ways because I just like recently, like in the last couple of years, been able to reignite my relationship with my father on that same type of time, because like I didn't understand all that my father went through growing up. Like my father, he was a hustler. He did everything. He's from a generation where they had to move mad different, you know what I mean, to get what they needed to get. And he did what he had to do. And he ended up, doing time. A big portion of my life, was him in prison. So when he came back home, there was this complete disconnect between me and him, because I almost felt like, he didn't know me and I didn't know him, even though he was always in contact, he was
Hmm.
always there, he was always helping, but it was just different. I'm used to, in hindsight, my mom, like handling the or unfortunately my mom handling the business, and you know making sure she gets all the credit, which she most definitely deserves,
Yeah.
but for almost forgetting, that what he did was putting food on our table and doing everything that he had to do to make sure that we was good. I think, as I got older, and things started to happen, and I realized I'm almost exactly like this dude. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of crazy. So where I started to realize, like, damn, I might have been in some of the situations that he was in growing up in a different time, and being that the resources might be a little different for me, I might not have had to make the decision that he did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it could be a little bit easier on me. And it just was, even everything that you're saying, with the hardworking fathers and being able to understand it. Like even, my grandfather, he was an amazing dude. It's something about brothers from that generation. Like they do all types of stuff beyond the odds. You know what I mean? Overcoming everything. Like he was in the Navy, he was a cop, he was a track star, he was all this type, you know what I mean? Like
Mm.
he did all this stuff, and you realize like how these generational things and how people deal with them in their time with what their resources are at the moment truly shape them.
Yeah.
And I think as a curator, and a person that's, working with artists and, trying to help them understand the art business side, you know, it's tough, trying to almost stay true to who you are and help them get along in a space that's very, I'm not going to say anti that culture, but it's it's favorable when it's favorable. I'm going to keep it honest.
Yeah.
And it's the same way. And it was beautiful that you brought up Hammonds, who's my favorite artist of all time,
Yes.
with the tarps, because I was going to bring that up, and you made a great analogy of the resourcefulness and how people only use it when there's destruction. You know, they only use it when they're trying to hide something of value. They only use it when they're trying to cover up something. And I thought that that was just a brilliant analogy for the black male in the art space, because this space is, rather particular, of what black males they want to see at the forefront. A lot of us are kept under that tarp, or take the form of the tarp and are used as a canvas. Most people, especially most black men and artists that I've talked to, feel that they're just the voice for an object. Like no one actually really sees them. And I feel like that sometimes as a curator. It's a very competitive space, and sometimes it's not as fair as we'd like it to be. And yeah, man, it was just so relatable, and just to hear that, it's always great to just hear somebody else can relate to some of the other things that people go through, especially other black males, because it's tough to talk about.
Yeah.
It's easy to end up on the other side of someone's favor, by speaking some truth sometimes, and it's just necessary sometimes, man.
No, for sure. And I think it's so something you said that I agree with. Like that was a very particular time that our grandfathers, even our fathers, were raised in. And I don't want to speak on too like broadly, but I know that like in a weird way, when you start to hear stories about your family and you start to see the realities of it, it kind of changes a lot of things for you. Like like reconnecting with my dad's side, I learned how like my grandfather was like the one that showed up, right? He was the one that was there to take
Mm-hmm.
people to like their car test or something like that. But then,
Facts.
but then I hear about how he was in the house. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And it's like one of those things where like it's complex, it's heavy, but like
Mm-hmm.
I just want us to be better. I want people to be better, and I wish my dad didn't have to go through what he went through. Um,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Because like
Yes.
the reality is that he wasn't a nice guy, and this is, and I'm speaking like in a very like more polite way about him. But my grandfather wasn't a
Mm-hmm.
nice guy at all, and so when I think about archetypes of like men in my life, there's always this caveat that they had to do or had to exist or they like did certain things. And I always think to myself the most, I just wonder if anybody ever checked in on them. You know what I mean? Ever asked
Mm-hmm.
them like how you feeling and like meant it in the sense that like it's okay to be vulnerable to have these conversations because part of being seen is to be
Yeah.
able to let yourself like kind of bloom in a very particular
Mm-hmm.
way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like allow
Hell
your
yeah.
weirdness, your quirks to kind of be shown through, and not feel like you have to constantly be this quote unquote tough, tough presenting person, or this
Mm-hmm.
like politically correct person, or this like it's all about respectability politics because no matter where you are in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like existing, it's all like some form of respectability politics. You got to look this way, you got to act this way, you got to talk this way. And the one thing that has rung true to me is that that shit don't matter um,
Yep.
in a real way.
Yep.
Like, you know what I mean? Especially in terms of when we think about the hostility towards the black community in terms of police, like it just didn't matter. Like man, woman, or
Mm-hmm.
child, children, and everything in between. Like it doesn't matter if you're on the spectrum. It doesn't matter if you're in the suit. It doesn't matter if you're an owner of a team. It doesn't matter if you're a cop.
Yep.
Just like certain things have been predestined upon our bodies. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
that if specifically if we're talking about black men, the biggest thing I suggest is just this moment of clarity upon self that it's okay to be human. It's okay to be human because like
Yes.
doing everything and being everything for everybody, that's great. And a lot of men feel like it's their responsibility. That's great. But also you gotta learn what it means to be a human being. And I think like we're feeling the echoes of that more and more and more throughout
Mm-hmm.
life because to
Mm-hmm.
still to my knowledge, men and I think even specifically black men are still the highest percentage of people who decide to take their lives. And so
Yes.
I
Yep.
I say
Yep.
that with the utmost respect for any person who makes a particular decision about their life, that the humanness of it all is far more important than how tough you look, than how many Jordans you got, than how many clothes you feel me, like the humanness of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I've come to learn is that the I didn't have to experience the life that my dad did. And I can only
Mm-hmm.
imagine the amount of heartache, the amount of things he had to do or he felt like he
Hell
had to
yeah.
do to pivot or move or succeed or whatever. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
thankful that he decided that there was a preordained destiny or there was some type of like covering over me or there was somebody looking out because at any point in time some of these things could have like you feel me like been kind of parallel to
Mm-hmm.
my existence or kind of been my existence. And so I am utterly thankful.
Facts.
But like my 2 cents to any black person and any black dude who happens to be an artist or is an artist, however you want to frame that particular title,
Mm-hmm.
just finds their way of being a human more than anything else. Like it's a tough
Facts.
world. I don't think there are certain things that are happening that we hadn't seen happen, but it's just tough always. And I think the
Hell
reason
yeah.
like certain things happened within my family was because they were trying to find ways to cope. And to cope,
Mm-hmm.
you usually lean on like certain particular objects and things and people who may or may not be the best for you.
Facts. Now, you had a good point right there where it's, opportunities to cope. You know, how have you found that in the art world spaces, that you frequent? I know for me, I've been able to, luckily have a community, of people that, I can call on if I, need something here and there. I can call on to make a call if need be, or, to support me if I drop a project or something like that. How have you used the art world connections and the friends and the community that you have to help with that, or to be that coping mechanism?
I don't know if I do it successfully. I think
Mm,
that I think there are quite a few friends that I have within the art world who specifically, if they say if you need anything, reach out, right? Talk to me, right?
mm-hmm,
Like holler at me. And what I've been coming to realize is that there are people who actually genuinely want to see me succeed and want to help me out and want to like
yes.
support me. For a long time, I didn't believe it necessarily because they like
Mm-hmm,
plenty. So throughout my career, plenty of people have been like, "Oh, I want to help you. I want to help you." And I haven't
mm-hmm,
necessarily been able to let go of certain reins and certain controls. But I feel like help is like is different in a lot of ways, right? So like
yeah.
with the invention of social media, of course, and how it's exploded, help could be like liking a post, sharing a post, reposting a post, and just showing up to an exhibition, showing up to a curation, showing up when I write something, when I publish something, when something's happening. That type of support
Mm-hmm,
to me, I get tenfold over it, and I'm always thankful. In terms of like
yeah.
larger support, it's often me trying to like navigate that and figure out who's best for a situation and who I know I trust can see or kind of see the vision, because like you're not going to see it completely, but can kind of see it. Whereas though, like I'll say
Mm-hmm,
something and they're like, be like, I dig it, or I don't understand it, but I want you to do the best, or you know what I mean. And I find some of my biggest
mm-hmm,
supporters about certain things that I do aren't necessarily within the art community, but are like people who just
mm-hmm.
are part of my community. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have a friend,
Yes.
her name is Taylor, and if she ever sees it, she'll be like, I give her too much credit. But I remember 2 or 3 years ago, something like that, I started to sell some work around pandemic, right? And it was kind of like a mind fuck. But like, I was selling some work and I was like, yo, I want to do something. And so I wanted to do something immediately. So I did a scholarship at Morgan State University. Um, that particular fall, spring, it was a small scholarship. I did a scholarship directly because I wanted to make a direct impact, because a lot of things I think don't get
Beautiful.
executed as quickly or don't
Mm-hmm,
get executed at all. But I still wanted to do something a
mm-hmm.
little different. So I had many conversations, and then I ended up starting an endowment at Morgan State University. I've started an endowment. It's called Two Lane
Dope.
Stories. And it's essentially to help visual arts students at Morgan State University travel, right? To cover conference calls, to cover travel costs. And the goal is to reach $10,000. And we've kind of hit half. But I've been fundraising, like making prints,
Nice.
doing this thing, and kind of doing a lot of the legwork of it, and have an advisory board. And I have folks who like buy in to it and who are with
Mm-hmm,
it. But it's also like, there's like, it don't move without me, and that's like a new thing for me. Whereas though,
mm-hmm.
like sometimes I just like sitting back, but like you gotta be way more proactive with certain things. But I knew I wanted to
Yeah.
do it because I knew what it meant for me to be a black student, and how like travel, just a little travel, even if it's going to DC or Philadelphia or New York, changed my life, right? And so
Mm-hmm,
that's one of the things I've been working on. And I knew the reason I even brought that up is because I knew how important that was, and because of my community seeing it and thinking about it bigger, I've been able to do different things, and so I've been able
mm-hmm.
to navigate community and the stewards and the help in various ways. But sometimes you need a tangible thing, which allow people to
Yeah.
kind of buy in and buy in. And so for me, that was like the endowment. It was a tangible thing that I knew I could do. I was selling some work, and because of Taylor and me and her having this conversation, we were on FaceTime. I was like, because she basically asked me, like, what are your hopes, or what are you trying to do within this next year? I was like, I want to do this endowment. And so I started the seed fund for
Mm-hmm.
it. Like I started with the initial donation, and it wasn't a millions of dollars, it was a couple $1,000s. But my initial
Yeah.
donation is what sparked it, because there are a
Got it
lot of things
started.
that
Yeah,
happen,
man.
but like because of the conversation, because of my community, like just probing me with questions and wanting the best for me. I've been able to do something I never thought possible probably six,
Hell
7 years
yeah.
prior. Like I wasn't thinking about an endowment 10 years ago. I wasn't thinking about endowment 8 years ago, 9 years ago. What I've always been
Mm-hmm.
thinking about is how I can do the best for like community to make a difference, to do these things. And one of the ways I found out was like, oh, I can do an endowment. I wanted to, because like you see millionaires and wealthy people do this, and I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, but do I gotta wait for the wealth to come to, like, you know what I mean? So I had all these questions.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
all these questions because I didn't know anything about endowments. I didn't know how feasible they were. Essentially, you just keep
Mm-hmm.
building. You start
Mm-hmm.
out, you get your tip.
Yeah. It's just a
It's
growth.
just a
Yep.
growth situation. It's just a growth situation, and you got to fulfill it, and do all these things. And I'm always thankful for it. But I had no idea how feasible it was, and it was one of those things. And I'm gonna go back to this, like because of having that conversation with Taylor and talking, I was like, you know what, I gotta show up. I gotta do this thing and follow through.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm much appreciative to her because that's what the community that's been helping me. It's been the folks who may or may not understand what I'm working on, or may or may not know why I'm doing this, or like that this is a huge risk. But they push me because they because all these other things are happening. You know what I mean? And in terms specifically about the art
Mm-hmm.
community, I definitely have folks that like I can lean on, but like the thing about it is it's not a bad thing, but I think sometimes I just feel like in the art world I be trying to lean toward more people who align in some way, because it becomes easier to have conversations.
That's
You know what
fair.
I mean? It's just easier to be
That's
like
fair. Yeah.
like you said earlier, talking about the business of art. Like there are folks who are very much talking about the business of art at like a high level. I'm kind of intermediate, not because I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I could do it at a high level, but because there's a certain part of it that I don't want to give. You know what I mean? There's a
Yes.
certain part of
That's
me
important.
that I
No.
don't want to
Yes.
give. And maybe that hinders me and stops
Mm-hmm.
me from achieving certain things and stops me from like really doing what I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm working on trying to manifest and talk and do the work on all these things better. But there's a part of me that I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
give to anybody, to the art world, to nobody, where like
Yes.
I just
Yes.
want to keep, you know what I mean? I just want to keep this part. I don't know what it
Oh,
is. I
hell
don't
yeah.
even, I couldn't even tell you the words or language to articulate it, but it's like a part where
Yeah.
like, it's
Exactly.
like when I'm in
Yeah.
conversations and like somebody say something and it immediately makes me uncomfortable. And it's not because I'm
Mm.
scared of the
Oh,
growth.
yes.
It's not, I'm not scared of growth. I'm not scared of challenge. I'm not scared of tension.
No,
You know what I mean? But
facts.
it's like, dang, I gotta think about it like this.
Is I don't want to engage with
Yeah,
that
like
shit.
in that
Yeah. Like,
way, it's like, oh, that's the only
yeah.
way people can understand success and you
Yes.
doing the thing you wanted to do. And I'm
Oh,
like,
man.
and I get it, but when that moment of uncomfortability happens, I kind of lean into like whatever the person's saying, because like I need to know that information. Like even if it makes me
That's a
personally
fact.
uncomfortable in that moment, I still need to know that information, because I'm like, all right, this is how folks is thinking. This is what they talking about. This is why they
Mm-hmm.
move this way. I see this is why they got that success. I see this is why XYZ happened. And so I'm taking all that, and
Mm-hmm.
like one day I be having conversations with the homies, and all of a sudden I hit them with some stuff, and they like, oh, like shit, I didn't even like, bro, because like,
Yeah. I ain't even
yeah,
know
because
nothing
like
like
I'm
that.
taking it
Yeah.
all in, and I'm gonna filter it through, but I'm gonna be like, maybe somebody else can
Mm-hmm.
like do this thing or do that or whatever. You know what I mean? But I never understood. I was thinking about this before we
Yep.
got on. I was like, yo, why do I feel uncomfortable? Like, am I scared of growing? And I'm not. I'm not scared of success. I'm not scared anymore. I
Mm.
can't be scared because this is what I want to do. But like I be like,
Yeah.
sometimes when people be talking to me about the business aspect of it, it makes me uncomfortable, because it's like, how much more do I have to give for someone to invest in me? Like how much more do I have to give for someone to be like,
Mm-hmm.
yo, da 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 da. You know what I mean? And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna
Yes.
keep doing what I'm doing, because I was I was really thinking like some of the homies I know, they go through the front door. I'm gonna go through the back. And like, but when I go in, they know
Mm-hmm.
we still in there. You feel me? Like I'm still doing the thing. I'm still working the
Facts.
way I want to work. And I'm not losing who I am, and I'm not losing why I do what I do. If anything, it's just like
Mm-hmm.
it's, you know what I mean? But it's like you really gotta have these conversations and
Yeah.
investigations with yourself.
No, it's a fact. I've always, said that there's a price to pay for the authenticity. You know what I mean? And whether that price is something that Like you said, it's a part of you that you're not willing to give up. I truly align with that because there's a lot of shit that goes on in this spot that I wouldn't rock with on the street. So I'm definitely not going to rock with in the art world. You know what I'm saying? And it's not only for the fact that homies and all that would be looking at me all types of crazy, my family even, but just like I'm not with that shit. You know what I mean? Just There's just shit that I'm just not with. So I realize that there's a level of shit that I wouldn't get to because I'm not with a lot of shit that's people are just letting go
Yeah.
go on, in the art world. And I've learned to be okay with that. I've learned to, there's a level of it that, I'm not going to see because I'm not playing a certain game. There's connections that I won't have because I won't give what they want. Because somebody always wants something more than what your service is or what the object you're offering is. They always want more. It's always seeming like it's something, that's almost like you said, like they just want something else. It seems like they're never satisfied with getting the work. It's a discount or it's something tied to a sale. It can just never be the well. Sometimes it's an appreciation of the work, but it just feels sometimes really awkward. And as a black male, I hated having to tiptoe around things or try to maneuver or have to tell an artist, well, this is what this person is going to do if they buy an artwork, or this is how you get there, or this and that, to the point where it just was like, yo, like, I'm going to just tell you straight up, this is what they're going to do with the artwork when they buy it. This is what they want to buy it for. This is how they do that to me, because it's like, yo, like, I'm not going to lie to you. Like, there's so much going on with people living their lives, this is being their career, them having to feed families, to be sitting there lying about what's really going on in this game. There's some bullshit
Yeah.
going on, at these upper levels, and people don't really understand necessarily what they're getting into. And people don't understand how necessary certain information is as a
Yeah.
prerequisite to even enter some of these conversations. So it's not wrong for you to be nervous or uncomfortable or all that, because it's like, yo, like, why I gotta tell you all of that? When you start talking about business, like, why do I gotta tell
Yeah.
you that I'm making this move because I'm making this move? Why do I gotta explain it to you? But then people get, oh, he's arrogant and this and that. But no, I'm protective of what I am, because that's ammo that you're going to use against me later.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm sure as black males we all think like that, because we've seen it happen. We've seen what goes through, just like you said, even with the police brutality. We've seen art world, quote unquote, brutality. We've seen art world cancellation. We've seen art world shunnings and all this type of stuff for no reason at all. And you realize it's excuse me, you realize it's because a person didn't play a
Yeah.
certain game, or they weren't trying to give a part of themselves that was required to play that game. It's dirty work out here, bro. It's dirty
No,
work,
it is.
man.
It is. Finding or being as authentic as possible is probably the hardest part. And it's not to say that I don't want to be a successful artist, both financially and just like showing collected and things like that. It's not to say that, but it is to say that I am going to try to be fully myself as often as possible in these places. And I know everything has a place and time, but I just got a compliment for being authentic, and it was refreshing for this person who came through for a studio visit, and I'm thankful for that, right? But then I'm like, I wonder how other studio visits are going if this is like something that someone then says, you know what I mean? Like, because like 9 times out of 10, when someone first comes for a studio visit, we talking for an hour and it ain't got nothing to do with the work. Like it's just me saying like, I'm this person, this is what I'm thinking about, this is what the work is. And I've seen when I've actually expressed what it is that I'm working with and I'm thinking about, people kind of like, depending, kind of like either pull back or they're like really really with it, and I'm like, I know I've lost opportunities. I know I've lost opportunities when I'm like, yo, my work is about black people. Like this represents a black person, you know, or this is like, you know what I mean? I know I've lost because it's different to like what they say, what we say now, like stand on business, 10 toes down, like regurgitating like, you know, a slang and language we've used since hip hop has been born. But like when you stand or believe or work for or do something that you're really passionate about, like people will commend you for it. Don't mean they'll support you, but they'll definitely commend you for it. And so like I would that's something I've had to navigate too, because sometimes my dreams are a little lofty or my goals, or I don't articulate it in the ways in which they think I should. And so like, you know, a gallery will leave me alone or whatever, whatever. And I'm like, all right, like I'll do my best to cultivate the relationship, but I'm like, all right, well, I can't do no more. And it's crazy how that works out, but that's just kind of how, you know, it is. But no, I know there's at least a few opportunities that kind of just me being me. And I'm like, dog, like that's crazy. Like that's really crazy when you think about it in terms of like everybody is like, I'm on the artist side, authenticity and this, that, and the third. But literally, like, I feel like it just was like last week or something we saw in Miami an artist being censored. Like that authentic and it wasn't even specifically one thing or another. It was just like something alluding to. And it's kind of like, I don't understand. Like, I don't understand. But then I do because, like, I feel like sometimes we romanticize the art world as being an open, honest, and transparent space when it's not none of
Oh,
those.
hell
You know
yes.
what I mean? It's
It's none
but
of those things.
it's a space where definitely you can do really well as whatever type of person you want to be, for sure. But it's like we just can't like go in it blind and be mad at these places for doing things that they've always done. Like, you know what I mean? I never understood. That's a different tangent, but yeah, you know what I mean. I think we all trying to like find our way through this like madness of the art world and the world itself that we live in. And I think it requires a certain type of person to be able to then decide they want to still be authentic or at least sincere in the ways in which they think, speak, and talk and exist. Because there's so much of like so much of
Yeah.
everything's curated. So much of everything's curated. Like I gotta look this way, I gotta show up this way, I gotta do this way. You know what I mean? But
Hmm.
you know,
I mean, it's one of those things to me where it's like how I've learned to navigate it is like the people that you work with know what their intentions and goals are.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like if you know what their intentions or goals are and they align with yours, most of the time you're going to have a great experience. You know, even if it's not you know, the most like public, rewarding experience. It might be the greatest, private experience or the greatest learning experience, and you actually need that. um, a lot of times you might work with somebody who's you know trying to use you as a stepping stone to
mm,
another situation, and that might not be beneficial to you, but it's highly
yeah,
beneficial to them. So one of the things I've with artists that I've known for years, that I just met, that I've worked with, or artists that are mentors of mine, things like that, because a lot of them are still navigating inside of different spaces and dropping all types of gems on me. So I always relate different things I find on them, and it's just like you don't have to move, in the way that the art
yeah,
world wants you to move. Like you just don't have to do it, and when they understand that, hey, there's more people out here creating spaces, for their own type of voices, being able to stay true to themselves, foregoing a lot of um, the perks of art world success and taking local success, because sometimes they take and make way more, financially, and get the love that they're actually looking for from the community, just like you spoke of, um, with doing with and are happy with people that they actually love, that people that love them, that understand what they're doing. I've known artists that have, left their local communities and have went abroad and created communities abroad that have embraced them entirely, and their life has just been for the better because of it. There's so many options than what
Yeah.
we're presented. I always say, like, you don't have to, what you're being presented is not always what's good for you. You got to be able to say, you know what, I'm cool on that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try this other thing. Like maybe it don't bring me all the success I need, or even this look, or this curator, or this collector, or this gallery, whatever, won't come by. So what? It's their loss. I know it's good. I'm comfortable in what I do. And this was, one of the things that I got from this Jay-Z interview with, the Breakfast Club, where he was like, I'm confident in myself to where I won't allow someone else
Yeah.
to speed up my process. Like, it doesn't matter what someone else is doing, because it really doesn't. Like, it really does not, bro. Like, at the end of the day, like, if someone else is in the studio right now working, great. If someone else is doing something else, great. I want to chill and watch the basketball game. I want to chill and do this. I want to go
Yeah.
visit some friends and kick it. It doesn't make me less of a curator. It doesn't make you less of an artist because you're not driving yourself crazy with paint all over your
Yeah.
clothes 24 hours a day. You know what I mean? Like, but like you said, it's always that feeling of you have to be on, in this art world of, oh, I gotta always post that I'm in the studio racking my brain over this painting. Even sometimes the painting work don't even be good because you forcing it, or trying to write something. Oh, I want to reach this deadline because somebody's got to comment on this first. And it's like, yo, like, every times I'll be like, man, who the
Yeah.
fuck is even going to read this? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It might be like five people. You know what I mean? Like, why am I doing that? Why am I going crazy? And it might be the same five people that would read it on Friday. If I dropped it Friday, is going to read it on next Friday. If I drop it
Yeah.
next Friday, but who the fuck
Yeah.
cares? You know what I mean? So I've started to get to that point where I'm just like, yo, like, I'll do it when I'm ready. Like, and if it's good, great, but I know that I'll do exactly what I want to do when I want to do it. And then I'll still live my life, and the day will still be what it is. Like,
No, that's real.
you know what I mean? Like,
That's real. That's honest too.
I yeah, like, it's, I think, the art world will be
Yeah.
the art world. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be picky, choosy. It's going to prop up the folks that it wants to represent it, and it's going to keep out the folks that it doesn't feel is, at the level socially, because it doesn't have to
Yeah.
do anything artistically. They want to keep people who are not at that level socially, you know, out of it. And a lot of people will do whatever they have to do to be a part of something that, sometimes might not be good for them. So, like, you know, I just, in this game, I just wish everybody gets a chance to have their work seen, and not just their work seen, but have themselves seen. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of people who, man, I've been to some studios where their greatest work isn't the work the gallery wants.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it pains some artists to where they're like, man, I feel like I've been trying to do this, and I've been working with this new material, I've been working with this new style, and I'm like, damn, yo, that shit's amazing.
Yeah.
And they're like, but it doesn't sell. It doesn't do that. Like, can't you take a chance? Can't you post it out? Well, no, because then it throws off the collectors in my market. And I'm like, fuck that. Like,
Yeah.
show that shit. Like, you know what I mean? No, I gotta do this. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, yo, that's whack. But then when you don't want to get between, the business side, with artists and their gallerists and all that, because that's how they eat, and I'm respectful of that. But I'm just like, damn, like, the world is missing something good because of this hesitation. You don't want them to find it, you know, for cheap when you're no longer here, you're
Yeah.
no longer coherent to even realize what's going on. Let people see it, talk about it. It's important. Like, that's, I think it's so dope that, even though sometimes people, might glaze over at it or whatever, that you still talk about your work, bro. Like, I think that's important for artists to actually get a chance to speak to people about
Oh,
what they're
absolutely.
actually doing. There's so many, and we go back to that generation when we talked about our fathers and grandfathers. With me doing that falling through the crack series with African Americans, you realize that so many of them didn't have a voice. It's hard to even find photos of many of them. You know what I mean? Like, that's why it's so important for us to have our own voices and be able to save our own, copies of our legacies, be able to preserve and archive, you know, that same voice, without having to give
No,
it away.
absolutely.
Like I, that's why I think, that rose in the concrete of your work, bro, is to me, it's like it's the representation of black male trial and tribulations in the art world. It's exactly that. Like sometimes it looks messy,
Yeah, no,
but it's
it
growing.
and it does in a real way. And I think we have to contend with all these things, and I would never say it's easy. None of this is easy. And I would never say everyone's going to have to, like even where we're
Facts.
alluding to, not everyone's going to have the best intentions for you at all. And it sucks that we have to go through these, like we got to go through the fire, right? It sucks that we got to go through the fire to really come up on top and
Hmm.
really understand the things in which we need. Like I've had my own experiences in the art world in a lot of different places, and I don't really talk about it to a certain degree unless someone asks. Like I've done quite a
Hmm.
bit. No one really would know. I mean, just talk to me or look at a resume or whatever, whatever, and you'll see that I've been around for a bit and I've done quite a bit.
Hmm.
And even myself, I knock my head on the wall. I'm like, all right, what's happening? What's the pivot? Because at certain times you feel like you're at a cap and
Hmm.
you need to do certain things. And like, I agree. Like, there are certain moments where I know I've reached a certain like milestone, and now I'm trying to figure out how to get to the next one, right? And I think it's having conversations like these,
Hmm.
is having many, many conversations, and it's being really, really patient a lot of the times too, which is hard to do, right? And it's so hard to do
Patience is
because
hard
you're
as
like,
shit.
I know I can handle it, or I know I'm ready, but maybe you're not ready, or maybe you are, maybe like you said
Hmm.
earlier, the people, the excuse me, the right people haven't aligned with what it is that I'm doing, and you realize that opportunity is great, but
Yep.
alignment is even better. Like you don't want opportunity when it doesn't align
Mm.
with your goals. You don't want
Hmm.
opportunity when it doesn't align with like the next step. So when
Facts.
I look at certain things, like I don't just do things for the sake of doing them, right? Like there was a
Hmm.
period in time where I was like, yo, I don't know what to do next. I don't know what to do next. I need to push. And everybody was sending me things about residencies. I was like, at the moment, I don't need that. That's not what I need. I don't need to pick up my things and move to a different place. Like I have an established studio practice where I am
Hmm.
right now. I have pretty affordable studio rent. I have certain things that are happening right now. So for me to pick up, I understand meeting cohorts, but that's with grad school. You know what I mean? There are certain ways where I'm looking like where
Yeah,
like
I've been
is
through
this
that.
actually going to
Yeah.
benefit me, or am I doing it because someone told me to do it, or I'm doing it because
Hmm.
it looks good right now, or am I like I personally have to weigh the benefits and who I
Hmm.
want to then align with. And it sucks because you start missing out on certain things because you're like, look, I don't want to do this thing for the sake of doing it. I'm gonna spend 10 months somewhere. I'm gonna spend a year
Yeah.
there, and I don't even want to live there. You know what I mean? I would never tell somebody to apply to any New York residency and they didn't want to live in New York. You know what I mean? That's like a long duration. Like a
Yeah.
month or two is something different than like 10 months or a year. You know what I mean? Like don't move for to a
Hmm.
place. It could be Indiana. Don't move for a year if you don't see yourself being there another year. You know what I mean? Like it's little stuff like this that I had to
Hmm.
learn on my own. I had to learn from conversation. Like I had an OG, like a mentor, tell me like, "Yo, you can't bring everybody with you." And it's crazy. It's not even on some
Facts.
like you know how like no new. It's not none of that like kitty stuff. It's like really like you just can't bring everybody with you. Like you know you've been to Basel. Like you might be able to get one
Hmm.
plus one because everybody is converging on one city at one time. So you might only get one plus
Yep.
one, maybe a plus two, but you
Yep.
can't bring three, four, five people, and you ain't like the headliner. You not the
Hell
known
no.
homie. You know what I mean? So you just can't bring. And
Hell
it's been a
yeah.
lot of growing where I realized, yo, you can't bring everybody with you because like At best, you can finesse maybe one other person. So I end up doing a lot of things by myself because I know for a
Mm-hmm.
fact I got a ticket, or I know for a fact somebody will look out for me. And then if like I'm able to, I'm gonna like
Mm-hmm.
disseminate the information to make sure everybody good, to make sure everybody can do whatever they want to do. But it's just certain things you learn within this
Yeah.
art world, within this world, that like you want to do the best that you can, but also you got to take care. Like I got to eat too. Like I got, and it's weird because when you're an artist and you don't come from an artistic background, you like, yo, I want to bring up everybody. Like when I do this, I want to bring everybody. It's all
Yeah.
about us. We
Yep.
this, we that. And then it took me a couple years to realize, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I gotta really like be good myself. I gotta really like do certain things myself
Yeah. You got it.
before, you know what I mean? Before I bring people
Yeah.
with me,
Oh
because I
yeah.
can't bring you with me if I'm not good. And then if I bring you with you, are you good? Like, do you know what you talking about? Do you like, is this where you want to see your art career path go? Do
Mm-hmm.
you want to, you know what I mean? Like those questions
Yep.
aren't always asked. Was there are a lot of ways to be successful in this world. There are a lot of ways to be amazing, to be wonderful, to
Yeah.
do great things. But it does not mean that everything that you do, your homies go online with you, your art colleagues or whoever's going online with you. So you really got to spend time. You got to spend a lot of time alone. And honestly, I ain't gonna hold you. That shit's scary because you got to spend a lot of time
Mm-hmm.
alone trying to navigate and figure out, one, what's important to you? How do you feel about success? What does success mean to you? What are the steps to get to like a different level, to get to this place? Like, what are these things? You know what I mean? And then
Mm-hmm.
you just hope and pray that you're doing enough of these things, enough of these little steps that like that big step come, or like you're ready for that bigger step. So it's going to be like,
Yeah.
then whoop, then you know what I mean? And it's kind of wild because you like, fuck,
Oh
you know what I
hell yeah.
mean? You like, yo, I've been putting in all this time and it's still not working, but like it's working. Like these little steps for it's setting you up for something larger, something bigger, something more amazing.
It's sometimes it's tough. Sometimes it's tough to believe that shit though until it happens. Like it's I've had a few things to where it was just like, you be in there, you working hard as shit, you putting shit down, you meeting people, you reaching out, you sending the emails, you had a checklist of everything you doing, and it still doesn't work. Time after time after time. And you just be like, man, God, if you don't
A
fuck with
hundred
me, just
percent.
tell me. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like on that type of job. But then you realize that like he was just making you wait. And then when something does click, you realize, damn, I need to fall back because I really don't know where I'm at or what I need to be doing. Like
Mm-hmm.
I got the right situation. That's why when you said alignment, it was like perfect. It just, it made you think about the wheels on the car. Like I remember this video on Instagram with the boy from Philly. He was driving up 95 and his car body was going to the right, but he was driving to the left. And it was like crazy.
Yeah.
Like you knew for a fact he needed a wheel alignment. Or like it just was like my man,
Yeah.
your
Like
your
this ain't
will is
working,
all
dog.
like, you know what I mean? Like, but when you think about it, it's like in terms of like, what we talking about on that road of life or career or whatever, it's like sometimes you could be really, really off and you slide into something you're not even supposed to be in. And it wastes a
Yeah.
lot of your time or a lot of your resources or money or whatever it is. And once you think that so much of this stuff is being taken away from you, like, well, I'm never going to get this grant, I'm never going to get this. And I mean, I'm a victim of that type of thinking, and I've literally just had to get over that shit, with myself, bro, because it's like, yo,
Yeah.
like if I didn't get it, so what? I'm still doing everything I wanted to do. Like everything I set out to do, I've been doing. I What haven't I got? You know what I mean? What haven't
Yeah.
I done? All that other shit was extra. You know what I mean? Like you said you wanted to help artists, you said you want to do this, you said you want to do that. You're doing that. So why do it got to look a certain way for you to be doing exactly what oh, you
Hey,
wanted it to
dog.
look like
That
that, but
that
that
uh,
ain't what
that
you
uh
asked
really,
for.
I'm a victim of that thinking too, right? So like, one thing everybody they say write it down.
Mm-hmm.
But I do write it down, but I be like, all right,
Mm-hmm.
come on, yo, how much, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? But like, like just being honest, I'm like, yo, all right, I'm writing it down, and I'm doing what I think. But so this is why
Yeah.
I put a lot of quotes around the ideas of success because I remember having conversations and I remember writing them down early on in my career when nobody was paying attention to anything I was making. I was like, I want to be in museums. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I ended up,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in several museum collections. I'm in a touring group show, the culture that started at the
Mm-hmm.
BMA, went to St. Louis, in Frankfurt, Germany, and is going to go to Cincinnati next. And like,
Yeah.
so when we think about the ideas of success and we really sit down and again, the human experience, being human and taking that time to reflect, you realize you've already obtained the things that you said you wanted to obtain.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And like when that
Mm-hmm.
happens, it's like,
Yep.
oh, like it's starting to
Yeah.
click. And it don't look like the way we think it's supposed to look, but in reality, we never ever was like,
Facts.
oh, it got to look this way. We just presume that it looks a certain way. We presume that once you're in the museum shows, you're in the
Mm-hmm.
museum collections, all of a sudden endorsements or something come out or opportunities or something come out. But like that was the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And it will lead to other things. I had a homie, like an
Yep.
artist friend, he was like, yo, you rushing it. I was like, he was like, it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, yo, it's already happening. And I'm like, but
Yeah.
it take what for me, it takes someone who is literally experiencing the same thing or is like steps slightly high, slightly
Mm-hmm.
further or a lot of steps are further. So I
Mm-hmm.
respect every colleague, every contemporary that I have. I don't
Yeah.
even know them, but I respect what they do. But who I'm seeking and what I am working
Same. Yep.
toward are the mentors that are 20, 15, 20, 30 years in the game, even 10. 10, like I would say more 15,
Mm-hmm.
20, 30 years in the game because what they have done is that they have shown me by their existence that they have been able to maintain and continue to create and continue to add to the canon of art history,
Yes.
continue to be artists, continue to be cousins and brothers and sisters and uncles and nieces and nephews and moms and dads and husbands and wives. They've continued to show me that this is
Mm-hmm.
possible and that it looks a lot of different ways. But
Mm-hmm.
that's really
Big
what I've
facts.
started to kind of imagine as success, right? I love the people who are in this generation who are doing great things.
Yeah.
I don't know everyone, but I love you because I know that you're doing something that I am in a similar condition. But I'm very much seeking the folks who have showed us that
Mm-hmm.
you can do it and maintain it and be and succeed at a high level. And so it's one of those moments where like
Facts.
I've had to take step backs plenty of times, plenty of time, like because I fall a victim to
Mm-hmm.
like the
Mm-hmm.
social media of it all, the comparison of it all, or I fall victim to like, damn, I'm not doing enough because the income isn't coming that I know that
We
could
all
come. You know
do.
what I mean? Like
Yep.
the certain things ain't coming that I know is for me. Like I
Mm-hmm.
feel it in my being that like it's coming, and so I kind of make it up and as this giant
Yeah.
as I'm not good enough and I'm not doing enough and I'm not there enough, I'm not showing up enough and I'm not working hard enough. And I'm like, dog, hold up. No one has actually said this.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, nobody has actually
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
said
Exactly.
anything
No one
remotely
said
close to
anything
this
like
to
that.
you. And so you sitting here stressing, upset, blood, sweat, tears
For
for
no
no reason
reason.
at all. And I'm like, and then and this is where it really fucks you up because no one has said it. You always looking at your work. You like, yo, is my
Yeah.
work any good, bro? I can tell you right now. At the time, I don't even know if my work doing what I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to do. But then someone gives you a compliment. You like, man, you lying. Then someone else gives you a compliment. Man, you lying. Then, nah. Actually,
Yeah.
everything that you
Yep.
have sowed and seeded and and tilled is constantly being harvested and sold again. You just don't always see what is coming back to you. You know what I mean? Like you don't always see
Always
what the
see it.
word
Yep.
you don't always see the photosynthesis of it
Yep.
all. Like that the growing and the nurturing and the water and the sun
Mm-hmm.
has actually been feeding you and allowing you to be
So as y'all, we had a little bit of technical difficulties, y'all, but I know the conversation was dope as hell. So we still rapping. We're gonna do some more combos. This isn't just the only one. It's been a dope conversation, and we're hoping y'all enjoying it like we are. But to wrap
So
up
no.
this part of the episode, I wanted to ask you, like, as a black male in this space, what do you think is missing that really helps to uh, support us more? And how do you think we can strive to help bring more of that to the space for us? Or do we need other help? Or how do we work toward getting more of our resources to help us in this space? I guess that's a better way to put that question.
I mean, that's a hard
I
question,
know.
but in hopes of being very, just want to be a bit more succinct, especially because of the technical difficulties. I'll say that one of the things that I think is missing the most is paying it forward,
Mm,
which is in turn mentorship.
facts.
Right. So let's say I'm an artist, you're a curator. Um, the
Mm-hmm.
collector, right? How is it then do I create a collection? Because artist curators need collections as
Mm-hmm.
well, just like a collector or a Patreon or whomever. And I think some of that paying it forward, which is essentially having honest and open conversations about ways in which to either budget, to think about things like art
Mm-hmm.
money, to think about ways to like have a conversations with
Mm-hmm.
galleries. Because the one thing I know for sure, and it's funny because people think it isn't happening. The ways in which things have been run are no longer being valued and are no longer going to be the way.
Yep.
We could put out any examples. It's just not. It's just changing because now, actually, I don't know who posted this, but now you're seeing more collectors or more people who have access to
Mm-hmm.
wealth who are then curating exhibitions, who are then being more influential than they've ever
Mm-hmm.
been. The gallery is losing its touch because now you see more advisory
Mm-hmm.
companies or advisory boards happening. You're seeing people who actually are able to have conversations with artists and not just like, oh yeah, this is why I take 50.
Mm-hmm. Drop
Why
and
do
give the
you
50.
actually? Because yeah, you know what I mean? Because why do you actually take 50%
Mm-hmm.
now in 2024 versus the 70s and
Mm-hmm.
80s, right? Insurance and storing. I mean, these works could be technically stored at the studio where the artist
True.
is. You know what I mean? Like, I think paying it forward and having conversations with more black and brown people who are about that
Mm-hmm.
shit. Because not every person who looks like us, who looks like brown folk, are for them in any particular way.
Facts.
And so having true and honest conversations between artists to artists, curators to
Mm-hmm.
curators, collectors to collectors, advisors to advisors, and taking out the mystery of it
Yeah.
all, because there are so many young collectors that I meet that are treated horribly because they don't have a certain zero count behind their name
Mm-hmm.
or because they're just getting into the game. And I'm like, no, you're serious.
Mm-hmm.
If you just start out by collecting monotypes, screen prints, letterpress, Italio, that's still a work of
Yes.
art.
That's
That's still
still
valued.
serious.
That's still very
Mm-hmm.
serious. But again, there are a lot of times they put on wait lists. I read the case. I read the Bisa Butler when she was suing her old
Mm-hmm.
gallery. I've seen how galleries actually create wait lists, and the artist is like, I don't know why I have a wait list. I have work in the
Mm-hmm.
studio. You know what I mean? Like, and so it don't even gotta be at the gallery level. It could be at the collector, curator, and artist level, where we're seeing more black people specifically have access to wealth, have access to art, to knowledge, to information, and to disseminate that information upon each other in a genuine and sincere way where it doesn't cost anything. It shouldn't cost anything for someone to want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
I can understand when things start being like, oh, someone's taking advantage of, you got to set boundaries, like certain things need a little more nuance. But if you bring together a collector, a curator, and an artist, that's a panel right
Mm-hmm.
there because the collector isn't going to know what actually the artist is going through unless they already have a relationship with that artist.
And that's where a lot of gallerists, they in the past, a lot of them are, can't do it now because artists are a little bit more aware of what happens. They tried to keep them away from the collector for a lot of various reasons. Not to bash all the way on a
Yeah.
gallerist. I mean, there's certain artists that once they sell to a collector, and I've had collectors tell me this, that they call them and every time they get done a painting, and then the relationship gets
Yeah.
strained. And then there's also you know a few gallerists that won't let artists meet the collectors, because if they get too familiar with the collectors, and the collectors feel they can go straight to them, and buy
Yeah.
directly from the studio, which many of them do. And they
Yeah.
they they understand the business of how the gallery works. And you're absolutely right that the gallery is not only losing its lure, but it's also losing its touch with the public, because we know that a lot of people, if they're not part of a certain clique or family or whatever in the art world, they have not the greatest experience going to these galleries. There's people that don't understand the quote unquote gallery etiquette. When people walk in, they give you light acknowledgement, and then you go about your day. You ask a question,
Yeah.
it's a fucking problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, I've had plenty of situations, like that, and collectors even told me like that. They've been in places where they were really excited to, add a piece of work to their collection of this artist, and they went to a space, and the hospitality at the space was so off that it completely threw them away from any type of, collecting mindset. That it was like, I'm not buying from this person. I don't care who the artist is. So, I think it's also very important who artists show with, because that person is going to represent you when you're not there, and
Mm-hmm.
understanding who's going to be at the door, when people come to visit your show, who's going to be, you know, uh, gracing or greeting the customers, not the customers, that sound like a business, but viewers of the work, who are they going to be engaging with? Is this person, public friendly? Do they always have an attitude? Is that going to rub off on their experience of my work? Do they think the space is nothing but that? Because again, it does turn off collectors, it turns off regular people, it turns off people that's just trying to have a great art experience. And I think,
Absolutely.
especially with black artists, a lot of those people are black people, you know what I mean, that's going to see those shows, and they're like, well, fuck that, I'm not going to this gallery because they treat black people wrong, or there's always some little side eye when Latinos come in, or Asians, or whoever. And that gets around, I, there's been plenty of that in LA. And you walk in, there's a black artist who they're celebrating, but his or her black friends that come in, everybody's looking like, well, what are they doing here? It's like they're here for the same fucking reason you're
Yeah.
here. You know what I mean? Like,
I think that you're right, and we can't like blame. There's no one to blame but the entirety of it.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like some artists perpetuate it,
Oh, facts.
and some galleries perpetuate it. You know what I mean? Like, so you're right, not to like just specify one particular type of blame, but it's almost like I think also that's I'm very upfront with like these things. I'm very
Mm-hmm.
aware because my something even going back to the earlier conversation, I have always been looked at strange or different when I'm in art institutions.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of where a lot of my frustration comes from because I've been the not recognizable as an artist and then treated very differently. Or someone's asking, why are you here? What are you
Mm-hmm.
doing here? I'm like, what are you talking about? There's an opening.
Yeah.
And everyone knows that there's an opening, but because I'm lost and I'm not sure where I'm supposed to go, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, why are you here? What are you doing? I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm just looking for the way to get to where my colleague, my friend, the
Yeah.
person I know is having the show. And it's perpetuated through all these systems. And this is why, like, it's so important that we articulate this, but also we hold places accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Like I shouldn't feel weird walking into a museum that has black and brown people on the walls. Like I shouldn't feel weird.
Or on the
Like I shouldn't
staff.
feel away by staff, by anybody. Like we should be scrutinizing this not only because of who's placing our work, but because that shows me that you care outside of proximity to something.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to the whole like premise of my work: conditional love and adoring. Your
Mm-hmm.
conditions on me dictate how you're going to love me and my body and the people who look like me. It's all conditional. And I
Facts.
am the one that has to endure that. You are the one, someone else has to endure that, not the people who are placing these conditions. Like, there are some better situations than others, and I'm fine knowing that a lot of things have conditions on them. But if we just decide to be better people or just care a little differently, then it would feel less of a constraint, less of a restriction. There are plenty of museums that, like, I've been in, and I'm like, dang, it's crazy. Like, I don't really want to be in here no more.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. Like, you feel me? Like, they're like, it's wild. It's really wild, and I'm tired of having to be in proximity of or be acknowledged as for someone to be like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
hey, let me talk to Charles. Let me talk to Trey. Let me talk to him because I know who he's connected with.
Mm-hmm. That's a fact. Like I just fucking stopped going. Like
Yeah,
if I don't have no value other than somebody that I know, or something that I complete, like that I do, or I don't need to. If my value of just being present isn't good enough, I just don't fucking go. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, and I'm cool with that. I've gotten to the point where that's enough for me. You know what I mean? Like, if I want to go there and put on my curator hat, if that's welcome, great. If I want to go there with a regular hat on and just be a visitor, and I don't want nobody to know that I do anything, I just expect the same type of respect if I just walked in and just come view art. I don't want to be looked at like, oh, what are you doing here? And then someone else says, oh, hey, da 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 da, hey, what's up? Da-da. Then they're like, oh, you, oh,
yeah,
okay, da-da-da. And it's like, nah, fuck that, because then now I become arrogant or whatever. And it's like, no, I'm not arrogant. I'm just responding to how I was welcomed. And then
yeah.
that brings
So
a whole
no,
strain because now I'm leaving anyway. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Because now this
a
is
hundred
all
percent.
weird. I just wanted to see artwork. Now this whole shit is weird. You know what I mean? Like, so it's that same vibe for me. It's just like, I understand, the value of my mind. I understand the value of my
Hmm.
presence. I understand the value of my colleagues' minds and presences, to where it's like, yo, like if you want to deal with this, if you have a higher tolerance of this, I'm okay with that. But this is where mine ends and I'm going to exit left, and I'll catch up with you after. I don't hold nothing against you for it. You have different goals than I have, but my goals don't require this conversation or this
For
interaction,
sure.
or you know what I mean, or this um type of just the vibe that makes me feel uncomfortable, or what am I doing here. Like, if I ever felt like that at a gallery, I always just went to the next gallery. There's always a couple of them and I'm just like, oh, okay, well, boom,
Yeah. No,
fuck
absolutely.
it.
And what isn't missed on me is that because of our parents and grandparents' generation, and let me tie that into art, because of the Faith Ringolds, the Sam Gilliams, the Ed Clarks, the Elizabeth Catletts, the whomever's, Singer
Mm-hmm.
Nagudis, like because of these people, the David Hammonds, I didn't have the language and I didn't know that they have fought, they have protested, they have walked. And so I don't want no less than.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a long history of black artists who have fought for now, like now everyone wants to collect, you know what I mean? Now we're in these
Mm-hmm.
shows and who have fought, I know then that I can say certain things and not feel like I have to be apologetic, to not feel like I have to be judged. I have to judge myself, and I can present myself however I like to present myself and still be accepted in those places, even if you don't want to accept me, because there's a long history of these artists who have done it and who have
Yes.
continued to do it and will continue to do it. And because of that, I am on the backs of giants. I am standing on top of giants. I am thankful for the giants who have become our ancestors, who have shaped the art world in a very, very important way. And because of that, I will not, like, you know what I mean? I
Mm-hmm.
will continue to, because I don't know who's looking at me. I don't know who see what I'm doing and I'm like, oh yeah, let me do this. I don't know none of that.
Yep.
But I do know that there's a precedence that has been started and that I must maintain and continue to do and push forward because it is a requirement of my existence, not because of anything
Facts.
outside of just like I know that they had to do so much work And so then I'm like, all right, I'm here.
Yep.
I can I can be successful. I seen it. They can do it. I smell it. I touched it. I can
Mm-hmm.
be in this place. Yep. But I also can make fun of all of this, and that's where David Hammons. Like David Hammons is by far my favorite artist of all
Same.
time.
He's
Like
a
of
G.
all time. Right.
He's a G. Like
And
I'm
can't nobody track him down,
yeah.
but like five people.
Like I'm fortunate enough to know and have a mentor that's one of his contemporaries, and the stories that I've heard, and I actually got a chance to meet him when he had the show at Hauser and Wirth in L.A.
Oh, with the tent, with the encampment, like he had the little
Yeah,
joint.
bro.
Yeah.
I photographed every piece in that show, bro.
Oh man.
Like I literally had to. Like it was one of those things where I had like it was like the piece to me. I always thought it was the coldest, and pun intended. He had like these different books in this freezer, like, and it was. I don't even really know the meaning. I didn't really get a chance to ask, but it was just like this brother is cold as hell. Like, you know what I mean? Like it just then the basketball, like the basketball painting when he was painting, like it was a level of artistic thought and artistic, like it was a reflection of practice with
Yeah.
in every sense of the word.
Mm. I know
You know what
exactly.
I mean?
Yes.
It was
Yes.
he was taking everything that was around him, and from stamps, videos of construction people working, and him outside slamming a bell and all that next to him, like creating noise next to their noise, and the snowball things, and like he had like a empty glass where like the snow like evaporated, and it's like a whole story that goes with that. It was just it was it was it was it was I can't even get the words out, like, you know what I mean, like it was
Yeah.
just it was a mind fuck, but it was in the
Yeah.
greatest way, like fur coats with paint on them, hanging out, and it
Mm-hmm.
just was like church doors with salt. No, just
Mm.
making you think. A rock with human hair.
Yeah.
Like the shit just was making you think, and it was one of those things. Like I saw the show probably like 4 times, and then going back home with the photos that I've taken and just looking back over stuff, and you just like, yo, like there's always some other meanings. Like one of my favorite works of his is the body prints. Like I had wrote in grad
Yes.
school a whole essay on just black bodies and representation. You know what I mean? Like, and just how that series to me is just so prevalent of what everything is going through now. If we talked about police brutality, of him throwing his body up against the canvas, and seeing what that looks like. Because I guarantee you, on some police hood, if you were to roll, something over it, like, maybe like how you do a wood block and pull
Yeah.
out, you would see the face or facial print of someone's face on, on their hood or something like that. And I just thought that was just absolutely brilliant, man. Like I can't say, like, we could do a whole episode on David Hammond. Like
We could do a whole year lecture,
yeah, like
like on just like his humor.
yeah, man. But yeah, y'all, we would go forever. We would go forever. But
Yeah.
this is gonna
Yeah.
be some more convo. I had nothing but a great time talking to
Yeah.
this
Me
brother
too.
Charles Mason the third. I make sure I put the three in there because I'll be forgetting. I'll be trying to I'll be having a lot going on. But thank
Nah,
y'all
trust me.
for
I appreciate it.
being here with us. Thank Brother Charles for just an amazing conversation, and just being patient with a brother while we learn and we chat and get to learn more. And like I'm more than thankful. I can't wait to just chat more. I can't wait to see some more works in person, and just build more, my bro. Like I can't wait, man.
No, absolutely. I'm thank you. Thank you for having me. Much
Oh,
appreciated
for
for sure.
sure, bro.
All blessings for sure.
This has been an episode of Cultural Canvases. Peace, y'all. Till next time.
All right, dog.